birthday to Daddy. Happy birthday to Daddy. Happy birthday to Daddy. Happy birthday to you.
A 4-day search for a man wanted for shooting and killing the mother of his 6-year-old daughter has ended near where it began. Deputies in Tunica County say they found a body believed to be Markell Braxton. Investigators say that Braxton also shot his 2 children. Fox 13's Jeremy Pierre shows us where investigators say they found Braxton's body.
July 11th, 2025, 7:06 p.m. A 6-year-old girl shot in the chest by her own father, a 24-year-old man bleeding out on the floor, trying to save a family, a 30-year-old mother dead, executed by the man who claimed to love her, 3 victims, 1 shooter. One quiet street in Robinsonville, Mississippi, population 2,000, where doors are left unlocked and neighbors know each other's names. When deputies arrived at 1060 Soul Drive, the gunman had vanished into thin air. Or had he? 4 days later, investigators would make a discovery that would freeze this small town in horror. The killer never left. He was there the entire time, less than 100 yards away, hidden in the woods, watching as his 6-year-old daughter fought for her life in a Memphis ICU, watching as his son recovered from wounds he inflicted, watching as an entire community searched for him in terror. This is not just another domestic violence statistic. This is a story about possession disguised as love, control masked as care, a decade-long pattern of abuse documented in 7 police reports, 7 warnings that went unheeded, and a woman who did everything right, who set boundaries, who tried to protect her child, and still paid with her life. Welcome to the Crime Anatomy. I'm your host, and today we're dissecting one of Mississippi's most disturbing cases of 2025. A case that exposes the deadly reality behind closed doors, the warning signs we ignore, and the fatal moment when a victim dares to break free. If you're new here, consider subscribing, like, and share. Stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're education. They're warnings. Awareness saves lives. To understand the full weight of this tragedy, we need to step back. We need to see Nykeria Jude not as a victim, not as a statistic, but as a person. Nykeria was 30 years old, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend. Family and friends described her as warm, welcoming, radiant, someone who could light up a room simply by walking in. She made everyone around her feel like family. That wasn't just a phrase, it was who she was. Her social media was filled with photos of her and Marlasia. Smiles, laughter, a bond that was unbreakable. In every picture, Marlasia looked up at her mother as if she hung the moon, and Nykeria gazed back with a love that needed no caption. Her life on the surface was ordinary, working, raising her child, planning for the future. But it was also extraordinary in the care and love she poured into every small moment. Bedtime stories, braiding hair, packing lunches, morning routines. These rituals, seemingly simple, are what make childhood safe and meaningful. They're what build trust. They're what create memories. Nykeria had dreams for Marlasia. College, a life better than her own, a future filled with possibilities, not fear. But despite all her efforts, despite all her love, despite doing everything right, she couldn't protect Marlasia from the man who was supposed to love them both. Because beneath the surface of Nykeria's life, a shadow loomed. A shadow that had been there for years. A shadow that grew darker with each passing month. His name was Markell Braxton. Markell Braxton, 41, appeared on the surface to be just another man from Robinsonville. He had a son, the 24-year-old who would later try to stop him. He had a family. He had the trappings of a normal life. On social media, he seemed ordinary, a father, a partner, a man living a quiet life in a small Mississippi town. But beneath the surface, patterns of control and possession were already forming. And if you look closely, really closely, the cracks were visible. One social media post stands out now, chilling in hindsight. It hurts me so bad when I lose something I really wanted to keep. Where the fuck did I put that dollar? On the surface, a joke, a throwaway comment about losing money. The world to Markell was about ownership. People weren't partners. They were possessions. Relationships weren't about mutual respect. They were about control. And when he lost something he believed was his. Rage. Not grief. Not acceptance. Rage. Nykeria met Markell in her early 20s. At first, he seemed perfect. Confident. Charming. Attentive. Exactly what she had been searching for. This is how it always starts. Psychologists call it the honeymoon phase. Flowers. Compliments. Attention that feels overwhelming in the best way. He made her feel special. Seen. Loved. But gradually. So gradually she didn't notice at first, the charm began to shift. Attention became surveillance. Care became control. Comments about who she spent time with. Guilt trips about not being available enough. Silent treatment that stretched for days, leaving her wondering what she'd done wrong. Words that cut deeper than bruises ever could. Over time, her world became smaller. His influence over it grew stronger. Here's what we know from law enforcement records. There were at least 7 documented domestic disturbance calls between Nykeria Jude and Markell Braxton. 7. The first call? July 2015, nearly a decade before her death. The most recent? March 2025, just 4 months before he killed her. 7 times police were called. 7 times there was intervention. 7 times the system had an opportunity to see the pattern, to recognize the escalation, to prevent what was coming. But domestic violence cases are complex. Victims often don't press charges. They reconcile. They hope things will change. They're afraid of what will happen if they don't go back. And each time, the cycle repeats. Tension builds. An incident occurs. Apologies follow. Promises to change. A period of calm. And then it starts again, each time escalating just a little bit more. Experts who study domestic violence note that patterns like these rarely erupt spontaneously. Each argument, each call to police, each violation of boundaries is a building block, a warning sign, a red flag waving frantically, begging someone to pay attention. And tragically, like so many cases, the most dangerous moment came when Nykeria tried to leave. Markell's control was insidious. It wasn't always physical, though we can assume from the police calls that it sometimes was. It was psychological, emotional, manipulative, isolation tactics, criticism of friends and family, making her question her own reality, gaslighting, guilt, silence as punishment. These invisible wounds are harder to detect than bruises. They don't show up in emergency rooms, but they're just as damaging, and they often escalate faster than physical violence. By 2025, Nykeria had recognized the danger. She started setting boundaries, quietly creating distance, protecting her daughter, planning her escape. But Markell couldn't accept it. In his mind, Nykeria wasn't hers to leave. She was his, and what was his did not get to walk away. By July 2025, Nykeria had made a firm decision. This was the end of their relationship. She would no longer live in fear. She would protect Malaysia at all costs. She would break free. She did everything right. She set boundaries. She created distance. She didn't confront him aggressively. She knew that could be dangerous. She quietly, carefully, began to reclaim her life. But for Markell, this was intolerable. The week of July 7th, 2025, was tense. While specific details of their interactions remained private, neighbors reported heightened arguments. The air felt different, charged, dangerous. Markell was aware that control was slipping from his grasp. He could feel Nykeria breaking free. And to a man like him, a man who viewed relationships as ownership, that was unacceptable. Experts in domestic violence emphasize this critical fact. The most dangerous time for a victim is when they try to leave. Statistics bear this out. The majority of domestic violence homicides occur during or shortly after separation. When an abuser realizes they're losing control, the risk of lethal violence skyrockets. Nykeria knew this, consciously or not. She was careful. She was strategic. She tried to protect herself and her daughter. But sometimes even doing everything right isn't enough. We don't know exactly what happened in the hours leading up to 7:06 p.m. We don't know if there was a final argument, if Nykeria told him definitively it was over, if Markell walked in already knowing what he would do. What we do know is this. Markell Braxton arrived at 10:60, Soul Drive with a gun. His 24-year-old son was there. His 6-year-old daughter was there. And Nykeria was there. And he made a choice. This was not chaos. This was not a moment of passion or loss of control. This was calculated, deliberate, methodical. Markell shot his own 6-year-old daughter in the chest. A child who trusted him, who loved him, who looked up to him as her father. He shot his 24-year-old son, a young man who tried to intervene, who tried to stop the violence, who put his own body between the gun and the victims. And he shot Nykeria multiple times, the woman he claimed to love, the mother of his child, the woman who had spent years trying to navigate his control, trying to keep herself and her daughter safe. The target was always Nykeria. Everyone else, her daughter, his son, was collateral damage in his final act of possession. If he couldn't have her, no one could. And if she tried to leave, she would pay with her life. Someone dialed 911. Shots fired at 1060 Soul Drive. By the time deputies arrived minutes later, Markell was gone, vanished into the night. The gun with him. Inside, 3 people lay bleeding, 1 already dead, 2 fighting for their lives. And outside, in the quiet streets of Robinsonville, neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the sirens, the flashing lights, the chaos that had shattered their peaceful Friday evening. No one could have imagined what had just happened, or that the man responsible was closer than anyone thought. For 4 days, Tunica County lived in fear. Markell Braxton, armed, dangerous, and on the run, could be anywhere. Hiding in a barn, hitchhiking to another state, holed up in an abandoned building. Law enforcement deployed every resource. Hundreds of officers, helicopters with thermal imaging, K9 units, door-to-door searches, roadblocks. Social media exploded with his photo. News outlets broadcast warnings. The community was on high alert. Parents kept their children inside. Doors that had never been locked were bolted shut. Neighbors watched every car, every stranger, every shadow with suspicion. Meanwhile, in Memphis, Nykeria Braxton fought for her life. Doctors worked around the clock. Her grandparents sat by her bedside, praying, hoping, grieving the daughter they'd lost while fighting to save the granddaughter who remained. The 24-year-old man, Markell's own son, recovered slowly, his body healing from the physical wounds while his mind grappled with the impossible. His father had tried to kill him, and Nykeria's family planned a funeral for a woman who should still be alive, for a mother who should be holding her daughter's hand in that hospital room. At 4:47 p.m. on Monday, July 15th, investigators searching the wooded area behind Soul Drive made a grim discovery. A body, partially concealed. A gun nearby. It was Markell Braxton. Evidence indicated suicide. A self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had been dead for days, possibly since shortly after the shooting. He had never fled. He had stayed there the entire time, hidden in the trees, watching the police lights, hearing the sirens, knowing his daughter was fighting for her life in a hospital bed. And he stayed, watching, waiting. For what? We'll never know. For 4 days, while helicopters circled overhead, while officers searched miles away, while his daughter fought for her life in a hospital bed, while his son recovered from wounds he inflicted, while an entire community lived in terror. He was there, hidden in the trees, watching, waiting. Why? We'll never know. Did he plan to turn himself in? Was he waiting for the right moment? Was he paralyzed by what he'd done? Or was this always part of his plan? One final act of control, dictating the terms of his own end? The manhunt was over, but the questions and the grief were just beginning.
I miss my mommy, and her name Nykeria Jude. I miss her so much. God love everybody. Amen.
Against all odds, Nykeria Braxton survived. The bullet that struck her chest could have killed her instantly. But the skill of the paramedics, the speed of the airlift, and the expertise of the trauma team at Lubbock Children's Hospital saved her life. After days in intensive care, she was eventually released into the care of her grandparents, Nykeria's parents, who now faced the impossible task of raising a child who had lost her mother and been shot by her father. Nykeria is surrounded by family support, by love, by people determined to help her heal, both physically and emotionally. Her first words upon waking, shared by family members, were heartbreaking in their innocence. "I miss my mommy and her name. I miss her so much. God love everybody." A 6-year-old child, processing trauma no child should ever face, still finding room in her heart for love and faith. The 24-year-old man, Markell's son, recovered physically. His wounds healed. He left the hospital. But the emotional scars of that night are indelible. He tried to stop his father. He put his body between the gun and the victims. He nearly died trying to save them. And now he has to live with the knowledge that his father, the man who raised him, was capable of such violence, that he shot his own child, that he murdered the mother of that child, that he tried to kill his own son. That kind of trauma doesn't heal quickly. It may never fully heal. Nykeria's family and community mourned deeply. Candles were lit. Photos were shared. Flowers were left on Soul Drive, a public outpouring of grief and remembrance. Family friends spoke of her warmth, her kindness, her radiant smile. They spoke of how she made everyone feel like family, how she brought light to dark spaces, how she loved her daughter with every fiber of her being. The house at 1060 Soul Drive remains empty, a grim reminder of the violence that took place there, a memorial to a woman who deserved so much better. But Nykeria's legacy is more than her death. It's her life. It's the love she poured into her daughter. It's the boundaries she tried to set. It's the courage it took to try to leave. And it's the lessons her story teaches us about domestic violence, about control, about the warning signs we ignore, and about the deadly consequences when we fail to act. Let's talk about the bigger picture. Because Nykeria's story is not unique. It's tragically common. In the United States, 3 women are killed by intimate partners every single day. Every day. That's over 1,000 women per year. And the most dangerous time? When they try to leave. Studies show that a woman's risk of being killed increases by 75% during or shortly after separation from an abusive partner. 75%. Nykeria had 7 documented police calls over nearly a decade, 7 warnings, 7 opportunities for intervention, and still the system failed to prevent her death. People often ask, why didn't she just leave? But that question misunderstands the dynamics of abuse. Leaving is not simple, it's not safe, and it's often the most dangerous thing a victim can do. Victims stay because they're afraid of retaliation. They have financial dependence. They're isolated from support systems. They hope the abuser will change. They're trauma bonded to the abuser. They fear losing custody of children. They've been conditioned to believe they deserve the abuse. And when they do leave, when they find the courage to break free, that's when they're most at risk. Nykeria tried to leave. She set boundaries. She created distance. She did everything right. And she was killed for it. Markell Braxton is 6 years old. She survived a bullet to the chest. She lost her mother. She was shot by her father. But she is surrounded by love, by grandparents who are raising her, by a community that has rallied around her, by people determined to help her heal and build a life filled with safety, not fear. Her first words after waking, "I miss my mommy," remind us of the human cost of domestic violence, of the children left behind, of the trauma that will take years to process. But her final words, "God love everybody. Amen," remind us of resilience, of hope, of the capacity for healing even after unimaginable pain. Marleja's life continues, and in that continuation, Nykeria's love lives on. Believe victims. When someone tells you they're afraid, believe them. Don't minimize. Don't excuse. Share this story. Awareness saves lives. The more people understand about domestic violence, the more lives we can protect. And if you're experiencing abuse yourself, you deserve better. You deserve safety. You deserve love that doesn't hurt. Reach out. Call the hotline. Make a plan. You are not alone. Nykeria Jude's story doesn't end here. It lives on in her daughter, in the awareness it raises, in the conversations it starts, in the lives it might save. Rest in peace, Nykeria Jude. This has been The Crime Anatomy. We document the failures so we can build the fixes. If this story affected you, take a moment. Share it. Talk about it. Let's start conversations that save lives. Subscribe for more in-depth investigations. Turn on notifications and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you witnessed cycles like this? Have you seen warning signs that were ignored? Let's break the silence. Let's end the cycle. Let's make sure Nykeria's death was not in vain. Thank you for watching. And remember, love doesn't hurt, control isn't care, and leaving is the bravest step a victim can take.